1991. They've always traveled in style, whether it's flying on the MGM 727 during the Use Your Illusion tour, or using a Boeing 757 for their 2016 and 2017 reunion tour. Now in this video we're going to talk about Guns N' Roses plane that they're traveling in, show you some photos on the inside, as well as some things you can actually eat aboard when you're on a Guns N' Roses private plane. And then we're going to look back at some of the previous planes they've actually flown on, more importantly the 727 that they had rented from the MGM Grand Hotel in Vegas. And then I also want to talk about some events that have transpired around airports involving Axl Rose. So as part of Guns N' Roses 2016 and 2017 Not in This Lifetime tour, they've been shuttled around in a Boeing 757, and here's some pictures of it. As you can see, this is Duff along with members of the Guns N' Roses entourage. These are some photos on the inside of the plane. It looks like a pretty standard private plane. There's nothing rock and roll about it or anything too fancy, because you have to remember a lot of these guys are sober these days and they're traveling with their wives and girlfriends. It actually seems like a pretty clean, relaxed kind of environment. Much more relaxed than the days of the Use Your Illusion tour, where Duff and Slash were smoking crack the minute they got on the plane. And then we've also got a menu from the actual plane that they're actually flying on now, and they have a variety of different foods you can eat. I'm actually surprised they don't have like any selection of entrees. Maybe this is just a partial menu, but they have some really nice food that you can eat too when you're on the private plane. And you can tell by looking at Axl and Slash that they've definitely been enjoying their food over the last year or so. And then we've also got some photos that some fans have taken of the 757 parked at different airports during their 2016 tour. And now let's talk a bit about the Use Your Illusion tour when Guns N' Roses were flying around in the MGM 727. Now the MGM 727 came equipped with a movie theater, its own bar, and even staterooms for each of the members to actually go sleep in. And if you guys want to see a tour of the actual airplane, I have a link to a video on YouTube which takes you through a walkthrough of the plane from 1992. And then, when Guns N' Roses was touring on the Use Your Illusion tour, it was common for them to share the plane with other bands too, like bands including U2. So, while Guns wasn't using the plane, another band would be using the plane. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to turn it over now to Duff to tell you some interesting stories about the pilots.
We had our own plane for the whole Use Your Illusions tour. It was like a 727, and it had a you go on the plane and it had a bar. For me that was the selling part. It had a bar, it was a fully stocked bar, and in the back it had 4 like proper staterooms with beds in them, and sort of in the front there was like a movie theater. You could go up there and watch a movie. Slash and I would stay in the back. Slash and I, the first day we had this plane, we took off out of the LA airport. We're like, yeah, we got our own plane, this is great. And before that thing even took off of the tarmac, we were in the back smoking crack, I think we started a US tour in the plane, and I was always really drunk, by the time we'd land anywhere. But I remember the landings were really, really bumpy, and I just thought, okay, we're landing. We weren't landing where commercial flights would land. We'd land at like the executive airport where private planes would land. I thought, fuck, these runways at these executive airports fucking suck, One night we're playing a show, and it's after the show, so it's like 2 in the morning. There's our pilots, and we're about to fly out. And there's our pilots at the show drinking and talking like with groupie chicks. And one of them had like a pair of the groupie's panties, like he'd been off somewhere, whatever. I'm like, oh, these guys are fucked up. So I remember telling our manager, I'm like, hey, our pilots, is that cool? They're drinking, And it turns out they were drinking the whole time, and that's why the landings were so hard. They were maybe as fucked up as I was by the time we landed, which is probably not a great idea, for a pilot or for us.
All right, I'll wait. I can't even smoke here with me. I'm gonna get arrested like Izzy. Oh, okay.
Yep. I reached brushing my teeth.
We're from Fresno. Here we go, guys. See ya!
And then during the actual tours Axl's done without Slash and Duff, there's been a variety of arrangements that Guns have had. Sometimes they'll release a private jet like they've done for some of their European tours and have a Guns N' Roses logo on it. Other times they'll just fly first class on flights, and there's even been some photos I've seen where Guns N' Roses members are in business class as well. So they have a variety of arrangements. Now, keeping in mind back in the day when Axl was just touring with his version of Guns N' Roses, they were getting paid about $300,000 a gig to show up to these different concerts they were playing. Nowadays, they're making almost 10 times that with the reunion tour, so they have a lot more money to spend on things like private jets. Now, Axl was touring Europe back in 2006, and there was a news story that came out that he had gotten involved in a brawl at a Stockholm hotel. He had apparently got into a fight with a security guard and threatened police, and he ended up in jail. And then I think it was shortly around that time they were playing Norway, and Axl's plane landed in Norway, but he refused to leave the airplane and instead started another party at the landing field. Ice cubes were being delivered by car to the plane, and after a few hours at 1 a.m., Axl finally left the plane and was taken to a limo where he went to his hotel in central Oslo. Now, Izzy was on a plane in 1989 when he got arrested. He was flying from Indianapolis to LA, and he was trying to use the restroom, but he had to wait, and he couldn't hold it any longer, and he basically just urinated in front of other passengers. And apparently the plane actually landed in Arizona, where Stradlin was actually arrested, and Stradlin verbally abused a flight attendant as well. He lit up a cigarette in the non-smoking area, and most famously peed on the floor of the galley in front of shocked passengers. When the plane landed in Phoenix, he was arrested at the airport for causing a public disturbance. Stradlin said he was angry for having to wait to use the airplane's restroom, and he basically was expressing himself according to his publicist. And Stradlin ended up with a year's probation for the Mile High P incident. He also had to write a letter of apology to the flight crew. Soon afterwards, he retreated to his home back in Indiana, where he kicked his drug and alcohol addictions for good. Now, back in 1992, when Guns N' Roses were finishing touring Europe, they landed back in the States at JFK Airport in New York, and Axl was promptly arrested. There had been an outstanding warrant for his arrest, stemming from the charges that he incited a riot at a St. Louis concert the year before. So if you guys want to see the actual news story about that report, I've linked to it down below. Now, whenever Guns N' Roses would be touring in Europe, Axl would always run into issues with security guards at the airports. So back on June 19th of 1992, Axl was pulled over by a security guard at Heathrow Airport in London. It was the second time staff there had actually singled him out for harassment following GNR's visit to London for the Freddie Mercury tribute. Following the latest incident, Axl actually issued a press statement which he said, "Having given what I consider to be the best performance I'm capable of at this point in my career, I totally understand why someone in the UK would want to needlessly harass me in this way. I don't expect to be treated any differently from anyone else traveling in and out of Britain, and I understand these people have a job to do. However, to be singled out by someone who just wants to score a few points and have a story to tell his friends over a beer is really out of order." And then in Craig Duswalt's book, Welcome to My Jungle, he told a story how the band was in Israel in 1993. They were playing a show in Tel Aviv, and they were at the airport, and Axl would always travel with bath salts. You know, he would always be focused on being ready for the next gig, and he would relax in a bath with these bath salts, but they were white in color, so they often looked like drugs. And they were walking through the airport, and I don't know if it was Robert John or Craig Duswalt, but apparently the bath salts came out of the actual luggage and actually spilled onto the floor, and they started to freak out, worrying that they would get arrested for having drug possession, basically having drugs, and being able to explain bath salts to the security people might be an issue. So Craig talked about how he had to carefully clean up the mess and then put it back in the luggage, and they were never ever stopped or questioned for actually having the bath salts in the airport. Now, let's talk about some incidents at some airports and some footage we've got of Guns N' Roses at airports. So this one is maybe one you haven't seen. This is from Rosario, Argentina, back in October of 2011. So Axl is surrounded by fans. He gets out of his car, slams the door, shouts of some obscenities, walks into the airport. And apparently, according to Henny Music, Axl arrived at the airport after the band's performance. When the VIP gate to his private jet wasn't working, Axl was forced to use the main entrance where dozens of fans were waiting. And the video clearly shows an agitated Rose emerge from the SUV yelling, basically saying, "Get the F away from me, you effing idiot." Afterwards, Rose makes his way to the airport and is swept away by security. Guns N' Roses, of course, continued their South America tour from that point on. And then, as part of the reunion tour, Guns N' Roses were playing a show in Canada, and they're actually detained at the border for having a loaded gun. And the loaded gun apparently was one of the Entourage's members. He'd forgotten he had it, but Axl told a story at one of the shows that they've been detained, but the Canadian customs folks were actually pretty nice to them. And then we also got, probably this is the best known footage of Axl at an airport. This is from 2009. This was, I think, the first time people had seen Axl in public since Chinese Democracy had come out. He was on his way to Southeast Asia to play some concerts, and he attacked a paparazzi at the airport in Los Angeles at LAX, and he knocked the paparazzi to the floor. Apparently no charges were ever filed. Axl was pissed off because I think they were harassing some of his family members and entourage. Now, the last couple of pieces of video I'm going to leave you guys with is one's a video from this past year's reunion tour. Guns N' Roses were in South America. There's some footage of them at the airport. And then we've also got some footage from Robert John, who was the band's photographer back during the Use Your Illusion days. One clip is from 1991. Actually, both are. And one is a Canadian Customs. And then the other one is, of course, from Europe as well. They were touring Europe in 1991, and Guns is basically just waiting on the tarmac and just fooling around and stuff and talking. So that does it for today's video, guys. Hope it was something different, it's something new. Maybe you learned a couple things. Hopefully you can go check out those videos I've linked to. That does it for today's video. Thanks for watching, guys. And make sure you subscribe for the latest Guns N' Roses news. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at Guns N' Roses Daily. I'll be following you guys back if you follow me. So thanks for watching, guys, and take care.